For a four-stroke engine to perform at peak efficiency, all engine systems must be working properly. Running problems like hard starting, low power, poor throttle response, poor fuel economy, a rough idle or detonation can be caused by either an ignition, carburation, or mechanical problem. This video demonstrates how you can isolate mechanical problems as a possible cause of poor running conditions. In the next few minutes, we'll cover three common mechanical engine diagnostic tests: the compression test, the leak down test, and the oil pressure test. For an engine to run efficiently, the combustion chamber must be completely sealed at top dead center on the compression stroke. If there are any leaks, combustion pressure, and with it, power, will be lost. There are only four places that a combustion chamber can lose pressure: the valves, the area between the cylinder, piston, and piston rings, the mating surface between the cylinder and head, and the spark plug, either at the threads or through the spark plug itself. Checking the condition of the combustion chamber and cylinder is an important part of periodic engine maintenance. One of the easiest ways to check their condition is the compression test. There are many different types and brands of compression gauges, including one supplied by Kawasaki Motors. No matter which compression gauge you use, they all do the same basic thing. They measure the amount of pressure the cylinder is capable of compressing. Performing a compression test is a simple, straightforward procedure. If the engine you're servicing runs, start it, and let it reach proper operating temperature. Once the engine is up to temperature, remove the spark plugs and thread the compression gauge adapter into the cylinder you're going to test. Always check to see that the seal on the adapter is in good condition, and be sure that the adapter is installed securely in the cylinder head. Since the adapter uses a rubber seal, be careful not to over-tighten it. This will prevent leakage between the spark plug hole and the gauge. Adapters are available for virtually all sizes of spark plug holes. They range in size from 10 to 14 millimeters, so there's a size to fit all of Kawasaki's four-stroke engines. To prevent damage to the ignition coils, the ignition system must be disabled in some way. Connect the gauge to the adapter. Then, while holding the throttle wide open to maximize cylinder filling, crank the engine at a normal starting RPM. The compression test is complete when the needle on the gauge stops rising. Look in the engine top end section of the service manual for the range of usable compression. Remember that on multi-cylinder engines, the compression reading should not vary more than 10% between the cylinders. If the variation is more than 10%, first, make sure all valve clearances are set correctly and then recheck the compression. Compare the reading on the gauge with the usable range in the service manual. If the reading is within the specification, then in most cases we can assume the engine top end is okay. Some Kawasaki engines are equipped with an automatic compression release. If the compression reading is too high on one of these engines, the release may be worn or defective, causing increased wear on the starter motor or mechanism. Be sure to write down the results of the compression test. Use the results to show the customer the condition of his engine and to compare with the readings at the next scheduled service. In this case, the reading is lower than the service specification. Here the compression test has revealed a problem with the engine's top end. It could be a failed component, a worn component, or just a valve that is out of adjustment. Additional testing using the compression gauge can help you zero in on the cause of the low compression. Squirt a few drops of oil in the cylinder. This will temporarily seal possible excess clearance between the piston and the cylinder wall. If the compression reading increases, then the piston to cylinder clearance must be too large, indicating a worn cylinder, piston, or rings. If the reading does not change significantly, or the results are inconclusive, the problem may lie elsewhere, and additional diagnostic testing is required using another tool. More specific and accurate evaluation of the top end's condition is possible using a cylinder leak-down tester, sometimes referred to as a four-stroke leak-down tester, or a differential pressure gauge. There are many different brands and types of leak-down testers. To use this tester, first place the cylinder to be checked at top dead center on the compression stroke. You'll find the top dead center marks in the top end section of the service manual. Not only must the piston be at top dead center, but both valves must be closed as well. This can be verified by checking the position of the camshaft lobes. The lobes must be pointed away from the rocker arm or tappet. Another way to verify that the piston is on the compression stroke is to install the adapter and feel for air movement as the piston rises. The rubber seal on the end of the adapter must be in good condition. Install the leak down tester adapter in the spark plug hole the same way you install the adapter for the compression gauge. The adapter for use with the leak down tester is similar to the one used with the compression gauge. The only difference is that the compression gauge adapter has a one-way valve in the end, while the adapter for the leak down gauge does not. If you want to use a compression gauge adapter for a leak down test, be sure to remove the one-way valve. All brands and types of cylinder leak down testers operate on the same basic principle. A regulated amount of air pressure is placed in the cylinder. The tester then compares the regulated amount of air pressure to the air pressure that the cylinder is holding. The difference is the amount that the cylinder is leaking. First, set the regulator on the tester. Some testers require the amount of regulated pressure to be set, while other testers are simply zeroed. Although the amount of regulated pressure is not critical, 100 pounds per square inch is a convenient amount to use on the testers that need a regulated amount of pressure set. Next, after the adapter has been installed, connect the gauge to the adapter. Use caution when pressurizing the cylinder, as the sudden pressure may cause the engine to rotate from top dead center. To prevent the engine from rotating, put the transmission in gear and apply the rear brake. The tester indicates how much of the regulated pressure the cylinder is holding. Since the piston is at top dead center on the compression stroke, the cylinder should hold the air pressure without leaking. Although any leakage indicates a less than perfect condition, 10% leak down is a generally accepted service limit. If the pressure loss is greater than 10%, the leak must be found. You can locate the leak by listening and feeling at key points. A hissing sound and slight air movement at the exhaust pipe outlet indicates an exhaust valve is leaking. A hissing sound and slight air movement at the carburetor inlet indicates that an intake valve is leaking. To determine if the leak is past the piston rings, remove the oil filler cap and listen and feel for air movement there. To detect leaks at the cylinder head gasket or at the spark plug, spray these areas with a soapy water solution. If the engine is liquid-cooled, pressure may be leaking into the water jackets. To check for this, remove the radiator cap and look for air bubbles in the coolant. Once the leak is found, repair procedures can begin. Remember that if the engine has a lot of miles on it or it's been abused, it could be leaking from several places at the same time. Before disassembling the engine for repairs, it's a good idea to make a general check of the engine's bottom end. One way to do this is by testing the engine's oil pressure. This will give you a good idea of the condition of the oil pump and bearings. Before checking the oil pressure, be sure the engine oil level is okay. We recommend that you use the Kawasaki oil pressure gauge, part number 57001, 164, and adapters for this test. There are different adapters needed for use on different Kawasaki models. The correct adapter will be listed in the service manual for the model you're working on. Remove the oil pressure sending unit and thread the gauge adapter into the hole. Start the engine and observe the pressure at various engine RPMs. Compare the reading of the gauge to the specifications in the engine lubrication section of the manual. To check for proper operation of the oil pressure relief valve, perform the oil pressure test when the engine's cold. The relief valve prevents the oil pressure from going too high. The reading will fluctuate as the relief valve opens and closes and then stabilize as the engine warms up. If the oil pressure is too high, the oil pressure relief valve is faulty. If the oil pressure is too low, check the oil pump, pressure relief valve, and the engine bearings for wear immediately. Do not operate the engine with low oil pressure. Now that we've performed the 3 basic tests of an engine's mechanical condition, let's review. Here are some important points to remember. When performing the compression test, disable the ignition system or ground the spark plug leads. Hold the throttle wide open and crank the engine until the needle stops rising. When performing a leak down test, Make sure the cylinder to be tested is at top dead center on the compression stroke. If you're using a compression gauge adapter, make sure there isn't a one-way valve in the adapter. Install the adapter securely. Put the transmission in gear and apply the rear brake to prevent the engine from rotating. 10% leak down maximum. When performing an oil pressure test, make sure the engine oil level is correct before testing. To test for proper relief valve operation, check the oil pressure with the engine cold. Do not operate the engine with low oil pressure. Diagnostic engine testing can help you determine if a running problem is caused by the engine's mechanical condition, as well as help assure maximum engine performance and longevity. For further diagnostic information, please refer to the appropriate service manual.